So welcome. I'm Tommy from the ITSM Finland, and I have the honor of welcoming our next speaker to the stage. But before that, a few words about the topic itself and our next speaker. So the topic of the presentation is, will AI steal my job? Maybe a question that we have all think about lately, or at least some of us are thinking about. So artificial intelligence is developing at a pace which is almost impossible to keep up with. And this raises many ethical questions and produces new challenges to managing risk. But perhaps even more fundamentally, what does AI mean for the current labor market? Will we humans become superfluous in a world taken over by machines, or is there still a unique place for us in this new world? What skills do we need to develop to survive and even thrive? And how can we make the best use of machines so that they complement us instead of threatening us? This session explores how AI and digitization will impact skills needed and job roles, as well as providing insights into how you can adapt your mindset in order to grasp the opportunities of AI, instead of worrying about when it will steal your job. So a few words about our next speaker, Suzanne Galletly, working as a digital skills director at EXIN. In the heart of her work is everything concerned with the human side of digital. As such, she is passionate about topics such as lifelong learning, workforce transformation, and digital ethics. And she is a regular speaker at international conferences on the topic of digital skills development. In her role as a digital skills director at EXIN, she is accountable for the design and positioning of EXIN's certification portfolio for digital skills, in line with social and business trends. She is working hard to ensure that EXIN is at the forefront of industry developments, together with partners in a collaborative way, and is a member of many industry boards. She has been in the IT and skills development field for more than 20 years. So let's listen carefully what she has to say. So welcome on stage, Suzanne.
Thank you very much for the introduction. I realise it's too long. You only realise that when you're listening to somebody else introducing you. Hyvä päivä. I got some good coaching yesterday, so I hope that's all right. I'm very happy to be here today to talk about this very interesting topic of will AI steal my job in this wonderful 20th anniversary conference. So first of all, a little bit about me. I'll go on this side because my eyes aren't as good as they used to be these days. I don't have to spend long on me because there's already been an introduction, but I do work for EXIN, which is an exam institute specialised in digital skills. So we have certification in areas like SIAM and AI and Agile Scrum. But I think the most important thing is that I'm passionate about everything to do with the human side of digital. Not on the techie side at all, but the human side fascinates me. So this is me. Or is it? Because magic is in the air, isn't it? I just said that for dramatic effect, but actually I did ask ChatGPT about 6 months ago what it knew about me, Suzanne Galletly, and I found out that I'd actually been working in the German intelligence during the Second World War as a spy against Britain, and that I had the nickname Snowy Suzanne because I had a cold, icy demeanour. So that was kind of interesting. And then I asked it a couple of months later, and it picked up on the digital skills profile that I have, but there's also one other Suzanne Galletly, strangely enough. Who else would have that name? She's a mental health nurse in Pasadena, and it had combined us and thought that I was a digital skills specialist with a special penchant for mental health. So, why am I picking this out? Because I think it shows that although AI is wonderful, even though there are days that I feel 100 years old, I can assure you I was not born before the Second World War. And I also can't find any other reference online to Snowy Suzanne. So basically, it's an AI hallucination. It made it up. And that's, of course, a nice lesson for us in terms of being careful with what we get from AI, because Sometimes it just makes things up. So quick caveat, I'm not an AI tech expert, but a digital skills expert, so if you want a techie story, feel free to leave the room at this stage, but I hope no one does. No, all good. So, what can you expect then from today? I'll set the scene a little bit and we'll look at the ethical dilemma. Then I'll dig into some labour market and skills trends, and we'll look at, what are humans best at? Where is our unique value? And what does that mean for the opportunity that we have? I like walking around, but I noticed that it's a bit awkward because here I'm going to trip over things, and over there I can't even get back up. I'll work it out. So probably most of you are familiar with this, the different industrial revolutions, starting with water and steam power and all of that. Then we go on to mass production, electricity. Computers were a game changer with Industry 3.0, and most people agree that we're probably around 4.0 now with more cyber and physical connection. But what about Industry 5.0? And this is a vision that's been set out by the European Commission for enhanced workplace processes, basically based on the combination of human and advanced tech, like AI, of course. And a few things they've pointed out that I think are very interesting. One is that Industry 5.0 should be resilient. And we heard about resilience earlier from Martin, and about service resilience, but it can also be resilience, of course, against cyber attacks or pandemics. Dare I say, I'm not going to say the C word, but we all remember it. Human centricity, it also pulls out, so Industry 5.0 should be human-centric, and obviously that's very much been a theme also in Simone's earlier today, and also sustainable, and that can be, in a broad sense, sustainability. But I think this is really interesting. It should bring prosperity for industry, workers, but also society and the environment, and it's the first time that in one of these industry visions they've really pulled out the human centricity and the sustainability part. It's not only about profit anymore, it needs to be good for society and for the environment, which is a good thing. What might it look like? Let's be honest, none of us have a clue. But I decided to ask AI, because it's always nice to see what it's going to make of it, and it came up with this picture. I think it's fairly plausible, but we don't really know. Now, earlier, Martin talked about ticking the AI box, and this is interesting because I've coined what I call the AI halo effect. We sort of think that AI can solve all of our problems, everybody's talking about it, so we all have to be thinking about AI. And it's led to a kind of weird situation, because in the past we always used to, think, okay, what business problem do we have? How might tech help us solve it? Or what opportunity do we see? How might tech help us jump on it? And now it's like, oh, AI's here, new technology, exciting. What can I possibly do with it, whether I need it or not? And this is what I think of as the AI halo effect, of it being the be-all and end-all of everything. But there's a strange thing with this AI halo effect, because while we're all talking about it and jumping on the bandwagon, I'm the same, I'm ticking many AI boxes today, but at the same time, the actual adoption, if you look at the European Union, is actually fairly low. So the European Union has set the target for 75% of organisations to have adopted AI by 2030, and at the moment it's around 11%. Now we know that things can go very quickly. We saw that with Gen AI, so we could still get there by 2030. But there's this strange gap between the hype and the AI halo effect and then the actual adoption. Although of course you can argue what is actual adoption, because how many employees are using ChatGPT in their work every day, and nobody's even aware of it in any kind of governance structure. That's almost another topic, isn't it? So let's look a little bit at the ethical dilemma. And I don't know if some of you were at the AFI Code panel discussion yesterday, but that was also interesting because Paul talked about, with one of his contacts, he was talking about the wonderful opportunities of AI. And his contact said, yeah, but Paul, what about the jobs? So this fear, it's there and it's real and we can't ignore it. It's there, and it does sort of raise an ethical dilemma for us. But the interesting thing about this ethical dilemma is it's not new. Some of you may have heard of the Luddites. They were a group of textile workers in the 19th century in Britain, and they were protesting basically against the second industrial revolution when machines started to take over their work. Their pay became lower, sometimes their jobs were gone because the machines were doing it. And they protested, so they joined under a weaver called Ned Ludd, and they went into the factories and they burnt them down and they destroyed the machines and all the rest of it. They were victims of a new kind of innovation. And in some ways, this will always happen. As innovation comes on, there will be some victims, and we will see these kinds of protests. Now, I'd like to play a video, but this is always the thing about tech, isn't it? Everything is so unpredictable. So I tested this video many, many times, and it didn't play with any adverts, probably because I was testing it on my own computer with a YouTube premium account. And now we did it now just before here, and of course it gave adverts, which is horrible because I was running around trying to solve it. Anyway, long story, doesn't matter. Do you mind if I play it anyway, which means we have to sit through probably about 15 seconds of adverts?
Let's go.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Some recognition. Sorry guys, sorry. Fun moment.
My art is contemporary and engages with issues of our times and times to come.
The portraits are a combined layering technique. There's drawing, there's algorithmic responses to it, there's photographs, there's a whole meshing together of very, very different type of techniques, and you're looking through those layers.
Bringing Ada into the museum and displaying her works, it sort of asks the question of what is creativity? Can a robot create art? To what degree does a robot hold human-like qualities? And I think these are questions that we don't overtly ask in day-to-day life, even though we interact with technology all the time.
Wow, Ada. I'd like to practice thinking in an ethical way, and I need to keep you guys awake because it is coming towards the end of the day, you know, energy levels can wane. I'd like you to think about, do you think compensation should be given to artists who lose their job as a result of generative AI? Why or why not? If you can just, for 1 minute, just talk to the person next to you or behind you or in front of you or whatever on what you think about this, just to practice thinking in a bit of an ethical way. Okay, lots of discussion going on. I know. Okay, I'll have to bring it back, otherwise I'm not going to get through half of my presentation. But clearly lots of discussions are going on. Can I ask somebody, is anybody willing to share their thoughts? Okay, anyone willing to share their thoughts? Paula.
We were thinking that, of course, why not, if it's told that it is done by AI, but to whom the IPRs would go, who would get the money, but and we don't think that it would still drop the value of handmade things. But we still think that why not? Because if it's then it's everyone's own decision. If it's known that it is done by AI, that how much they are willing to pay for it. We have already now prints, and people are buying prints which are not handmade. But
we already start to see the complexities of AI, don't we? Because if you start to think about this question, it's like, well, who actually owns the IP? You know, you were talking before about prompt engineering, and so it's the complexities. The good thing is there's no right or wrong here. Ethics is often about trade-offs and things to consider. So it's just to practice thinking a little bit in an ethical way. If we think about, you know, what's out there, there's the EU has put together some guidelines for trustworthy AI, but I think the piece that I think is very admirable is the recommendation on the ethics of AI from UNESCO, because try and get 193, or it might be 4 now, member states together and get value alignment on ethics. 193 member states. I think it's very impressive. Of course, it's not binding, but it has triggered certain pieces of legislation, of course, like the AI Act. That's a completely other presentation, so I won't go into that today, as interesting as I think it is. But there has been work done on ethics, and there is some value alignment there. So that was a little bit around the ethical dilemma. What about the labour market and the skills trends? And again, I have to keep you guys awake, right? So I just want to know, to what extent do you think your own job will change between now and 2030 as a result of digitisation, AI, etc.? So who thinks not at all, it'll remain exactly the same? See, nobody dares to put their hand up, because then I really would be saying why. Who thinks it'll change? It'll remain, but it'll change, and you'll probably need to develop new skills. No surprise there, lots of hands. Does anyone think it'll totally disappear and you'll need to find another type of job? May I ask you what you do?
IT manager.
Sorry?
IT manager.
IT manager. And why do you think it will utterly disappear completely? Just disappear, maybe because of the tech. Well, it's interesting. Obviously, none of us have a crystal ball, but if we look at some interesting facts, and I think Krikor mentioned this report, by the way, yesterday from the World Economic Forum. I think it's the one that he was referring to. It's one I use a lot as well, a piece of research. One thing that they saw was that automation was going a bit slower than initially anticipated, and also regarding, obviously, a lot of roles will be generated and some will be eliminated. And if you read Gartner and Forrester, they're not all entirely in agreement about whether more will be eliminated or disappear. The World Economic Forum thinks that actually more will be eliminated than will disappear, which is different than what they said 5 or 7 years ago. So actually, let's be honest, nobody has a clue, and we're all just trying to think about what it might be. But what is clear is that, you know, by 2027, a lot of workers will need new skills, they'll need training, and they don't all have access to it. So this digital skills gap is definitely a real thing. And again, if we look to the European Commission and we look at their targets, you know, they want 80% of individuals to have at least basic digital skills by 2030. They're almost there, it's about 69. But scandalously, people above a certain age are excluded from those stats. But that's another whole thing, and I won't get on that, otherwise we'll never go anywhere. But they also want to have 20 million employed ICT specialists based on what they expect to need for the roles, and we're not even halfway there. Of course, we've got a way to go, but skilling up 10 million ICT specialists is still quite a big gap. So, some other interesting insights, and this one's actually from a sort of mainly US-based research. But what they said was that, what they found was that AI was actually being used not so much for the automation of, you know, repetitive tasks like we might think, at least in the early phase, but more for product innovation and scaling. But I found this one very interesting. AI improves the ability to make predictions and decisions, which gives entry-level workers more autonomy and reduces the need for middle management. So middle management, watch out. And if we take this a bit further, it's kind of a bit weird, because if we think of a normal growth path, right? We start off as a junior and then we go up, etc., etc. Now, junior, no need for juniors anymore. Everything's automated. AI can do it. Data. Media. Oh, we don't need them anymore. You know, there's so much data and so much AI capability, we don't need that middle management anymore. That's what came out of that research just then. But seniors, we need seniors because they need to keep the oversight of AI. That's the human and machine. But hang on, if I can't become a junior or a media, how am I going to become a senior? It's a kind of weird thing. We don't quite know how this is going to pan out, but it's a bit of a warning that if we over-automate and over-cut out certain layers, we won't be able to develop the senior expertise that is needed, and it's very much needed because that's how we get the human and machine part where humans are the oversight. So we need to see how this pans out. Actually, again, we don't really know, but we can see that it's a bit of a risk of being out of balance at least. So what about these role changes? What's going to be eliminated? What's going to come on? I think no surprise really with the types of roles that will be eliminated. A lot of these are around automation, of course, and data entry and perhaps the lower bookkeeping type things and some factory jobs. And what's going to come on there, for me, there's a mixture of different things, and some of them reflect, you know, generic things like the shortage of teachers, etc. But there's also a lot of roles in a couple of different areas. One is digital, no surprise there. You know, we're going to need big data and machine learning experts, digital transformation specialists, that's all going to grow. And the other area is something that I didn't hear mentioned much today or yesterday actually, which is around the sustainability area, another of the big problems of our time, of course. So, you know, solar and system type engineers, sustainability specialists. So this is the kind of labour market churn that we can expect to see in the coming time. And if we look at it from a skills perspective, the top 2 skills that employers said they needed from their employees, I think it's kind of interesting because it's analytical thinking and creative thinking. Now, if we think about what is AI good at, it's good at analysing, isn't it? And it's good at creating, we've seen that. And yet these are still the top 2 skills that we want from people, which suggests, and I'll come to that, that our kind of analytical ability and creativity is different than the way that AI applies it, let's say. And the third one, no surprise there, AI and big data. And this was the skill that's grown the most if we compare it to previous surveys. So, what about humans? You know, the good thing is there is stuff that we're very good at still. But before we look at that, it's interesting to look at, okay, what is AI good at? You know, when we had the kind of, well, one thing that AI isn't brilliant at is spelling. Because if I ask DALL-E to create this evolution of AI, it can't even spell generative. So it ain't always great at doing these pictures. But I think you get the idea, you know, good old-fashioned AI. We saw Deep Blue in the 90s beating the chess champion, very much based on symbolic AI. Then we had machine learning, which was a game changer because you didn't have to directly program stuff anymore, but it would be adaptively learning. And recently we saw the massive boost of generative AI. So what's it good at? It's good at analysing massive amounts of data. There's no way we should ever try and compete with it on that because we ain't going to have a chance. It's good at predictive analytics, and we've seen it's relatively good at generating content. But luckily, there are things that we are still, as humans, better at that are very much human skills. And the first one I'm going to pick out is probably the most contentious because it is creativity. As Simone mentioned though, how does AI learn? It needs to have fresh ideas. It needs feeding it into the data set. And those fresh ideas will come from humans. The second thing is, you know, I like to think that creativity also comes from the soul. Soul, yeah. You know, one of my favourite artists is Frida Kahlo, and if you know Frida Kahlo, all of her suffering is poured into that art. There's no AI that can have that because AI does not have a soul and does not have that suffering. It can only mimic it. And the third thing is, of course, with regard to creativity, is that even if you say, okay, AI is massively creative, you still need humans to take those capabilities of AI and creatively make it into business solutions that work and can be customized. So we still need this human creativity, I'm glad to say. The second one I'd like to pull out is related to the analytical part, and that is around judgment. And judgment is particularly important if we're talking about ethical considerations, ethical situations, but also uncertain situations. And let's be honest, we live in a VUCA world now, so there's a lot of uncertainty. And humans, we're better at this than machines. We can pick out nuanced judgments. AI will just pick out patterns, but humans can pick out the nuanced judgments. So this is also very much a human skill that we're good at. Jürgen Klopp, one of my heroes, because I'm from near Liverpool and he had a lot of success there, handed over now of course to someone else. Greta Thunberg, Nelson Mandela, Mother Teresa, probably don't need any introductions. Any idea what they might have in common? Any idea? These four people. Human decency.
Seeing the future.
Seeing the future. Yeah. Sorry?
Brave. Be brave.
Being brave, indeed. So, you know, what's this one about? It's all about leadership. And actually, there was maybe a year or two ago now, there was an AI summit in which robots were asked whether they would make better leaders than humans. And their reply was, yes, we would make more efficient leaders because we do not have any emotional bias. And I thought, oh, that's nice, isn't it? Well done with your efficiency, but who are you going to follow into the fire? Who's going to inspire you? Who's going to motivate you? It ain't that robot being efficient. It's a person. Leadership. I promise you this is my last show of hands, right? But if you were struggling with mental health problems and you needed to go to a psychologist, would you be willing to be treated by a robot? Now, who says, sure, why not? It's the future. I'm there. Okay, a few hands. And who says, no way, give me a human any day? It's funny because most people are still with the no way, give me a human. I am also. But I have been to some conferences. When I first did this, it was almost like maybe 2 years ago when I first asked this question, it was almost like shock, horror, no way. And I've actually been at conferences now where it's pretty much half and half. But you guys, I'm happy to say, we're very much more on the human side. But there's no right or wrong, of course. And maybe as acceptance becomes more and more of us might be like, okay. But that leads me to the final one I want to pick out, which is perhaps the most human one of all. You know, Simone also mentioned at some point earlier the appearance of social companion robots. And there's actually been a lot of experimentation around this with quite good results. So social companion robots and people revealing more of themselves over time and reporting decreased loneliness. It's something that I find very interesting, so I wrote an article on that if you want to look it up. But it's very interesting. Even so, let's be honest, there is only one type of person that can really empathise and understand what another human being can go through, and that's another human being. So by definition, empathy is perhaps the most human of the skills that we have, even if robots are starting to mimic it. So what about the opportunity? There is an opportunity here, and the opportunity is in human and machine. I already revealed it a little bit earlier. I'd like to pick out 3 different ways that human and machine can work together: interacting, amplifying, and embodying. So if I go to interacting, I really like this example because it's basically CALM stands for Campaign Against Living Miserably. It's a UK-based suicide charity. And during the pandemic, when everyone, of course, was having a horrible time of it, so they had more and more busyness than ever, and they couldn't handle it. They deployed a chatbot, and it's handled in the first year 26,000 users and 1 million messages. Now it sounds a bit weird, doesn't it? Chatbot for people having that level of horrible issues, mental health issues. But the thing is, it was a brilliant example of human and machine because the chatbot was able to identify the people that were most in need. And those people were then given the human touch and got to speak to a human. So it enabled them to scale while still picking out who is really in trouble here and making sure that they spoke to a human. Interacting. The second one, and here I can add to the A's. I can add to the A's of AI. Amplifying. And actually amplifying is a lot of what we do with AI, because when we ask AI to, you know, do predictive analytics for us and stuff, that's amplifying our own analytical capability. I like this example. It's from Autodesk. They've got some software for product designers. So they'll say like, okay, I want a chair, it needs to be 40 centimetres from the ground, it needs to be able to carry 100 kilos, etc., etc. Churns out all these designs. Of course, that's not the end design. The product designer will take all the designs, make something nice of it, put their own, you know, customization into it, their own creativity, but the software and the AI system has amplified their own creativity. And the third one, embodying. Some of you may have heard about the brilliant advances in healthcare that we have with embodying. I have a video. Do we dare again to go through the, I think we did, don't we? It was all right. Yeah, here we go. No worries.
AI, artificial intelligence, has some dangerous connotations, right? So I like to reframe it not as AI, but IA, intelligence augmentation. And I think we're going to see IA infuse all elements of our life. It's going to infuse everything from a physician standpoint about how I do a smarter workup and diagnosis. And when I figure out a condition you might have, I'll be able to do a much smarter, more cost-effective, and more timely therapy. Given how many mistakes we have, how many misdiagnoses we do, how big a problem medical mistakes are, I think AI or IA can play a really impactful role. It'll be something you have embedded in all your smart devices that will help track your health and give you empowerment as a consumer and a patient to take care of your own health and that of your family. And it's already starting to happen with Watson having gone to medical school. We can access the API for Watson with our mobile devices. They're partnering with the Apples of the world and the Medtronics. And I think it really has the opportunity to shift healthcare from the practice of medicine to the real science of medicine. So robotic surgery, even remotely, isn't science fiction. Companies like Intuitive Surgical have advanced surgical robots for over a decade. They require often the surgeon to be there in the booth doing the procedure. It's even been demonstrated that that can happen across the planet. The real opportunity is we kind of fuse AI, imaging, sensors, is in some cases for some of these robotics to become semi-autonomous, to de-skill advanced surgery so that in a remote village with the right robotics, maybe a local country doctor can facilitate and enable more of a complex surgery that could never happen based on where the patient may be, whether it's on the space station or Mars or in remote India, for example. So robotics blended with AI, blended with analytics and smart imagination, I think can really transform healthcare.
Wow, imagine an operation taking place in India with a surgeon somewhere right across the other end of the globe. The surgeon is still providing the leadership, they're using their judgment. You're getting my drift here. The doctor will be providing empathy, but AI will be embodying them there. And of course it's great for hostile environments like in space, we saw that, but also hot or cold, war zones, whatever, hostile environments. So that's embodying. So back to our original question. Will AI steal my job? None of us have a crystal ball, but the answer is probably not. But it's good to remember that there are always victims of major innovations, and we shouldn't ignore that because they are there. Your job will certainly change though, absolutely, as we move more towards this Industry 5.0 with human and machine working increasingly together. It will certainly change. That means you might need to upskill, you might need to reskill, you need to remain relevant. And what does that mean? Well, let's hone our human skills because that's where we add value. Make sure you hone those human skills that are really the things that we can do that machines cannot do, but also get savvy on AI. And that doesn't mean we all need to become techie experts in AI, but depending on the perspective of your role, if it's technical or more on the business side or compliance, get savvy with what AI means for you. So this is all very well, but the problem is we don't know what's around the corner, do we? That's the issue. So what we really need to do is develop a lifelong learning mindset, because that's the only way we can adapt to the next thing that's around the corner. And there's a few things interesting in that. One is this concept of serial mastery that I think a lot of us have had. Probably a lot of us in the room were first service management experts, then maybe at some point we needed to become an agile expert or something like that, and now we might all need to become AI experts in one way or another. This concept of serial mastery. Build your own personal brand and network, own your journey. But I think I'm going to end with the do what you love and discover your reason for being, your ikigai, Japanese concept, of course. Because if you do, and you're doing what you're doing in line with that, then learning will never be a chore or a burden, but just a pleasure and a part of your own personal journey. So that's what I wanted to say today. I'd love to link and stay connected with you, and I'll be around to continue the discussions. I do think there are a few minutes left, potentially, in case there are any questions.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Suzanne, for that presentation. And then to the questions, so with the raise of hand, you get the mic. Anyone from the audience?
Yes, thank you. Very, very good presentation. I just wanted to ask you, since here in Finland, it seems that we're not really talking yet about Industry 5.0, and I guess I'm one of the few ones talking about it. In your domain, do you actually see a rise of understanding of what Industry 5.0 means?
It's a very good question, and in a word, I think no. I also think I'm one of the few people talking about it, and the more people start to talk about it, the more it's a concept that starts to grow. It is, of course, in European policy circles, it is well known, because the European Commission has this vision on Industry 5.0 and these targets around the European Union becoming a digital powerhouse by 2030, and all these specific targets that I've mentioned are in line with that. So people that are close to policy know it. But out there in the normal kind of world, not yet. And I actually think that this vision on Industry 5.0, I believe it will come, but I think it'll take quite a lot of time. I don't think this is something of 1 to 2 or even 3 years, but maybe in somewhere between 5 to 10 years, it might look like this. None of us really know, but I see the same thing as you, that at the end of the day, we're all still struggling a little bit with all the other stuff, and then it's suddenly like, oh my God, and then AI's here, how are we going to do that? So you've got the halo effect, but on the other hand, the pragmatic difficulty of implementing it, which actually means that at the moment this is a vision and not a reality. Yeah.
All right, thank you. And then we still have time for one question. So is there still one from the audience?
Don't be shy.
If not, then I might have one. So
Okay.
it seems that I might have a job in the future, but I need to learn more. So what you said in the presentation, do you have any suggestions on how to really enable this path to the senior roles that you mentioned without really having an implant in your brain and uploading all the needed data and intelligence there? So any suggestions to that?
So it's a very good question again, and a tricky one to answer. I think that there's a couple of things. One is that I think we need to be a bit careful with that junior and media level. Automation is great, and it makes us more efficient, but let's make sure that there's still this path and that we're not cutting out everything, which we shouldn't do anyway, because then you get the ethical oversight issues coming to the fore as well anyway. But the other thing is there are, because the European Union recognises this huge digital skills gap as well. So luckily there are many projects that have been set up to try and close that gap. So one of the projects that I'm involved in is the Artificial Intelligence Skills Alliance, ARISA. So some of you can take a look at that if you like, and that's been set up to bring together industry, government, academia, and to try to close that digital skills gap. So programs relating to, there's a skill needs analysis that is done regarding which skills around AI are needed, and then they will develop programs with piloting partners to fill in that gap. But it's only part of the answer, and of course it's difficult to see how it's going to pan out, but we need to make sure that we continue to recognise the importance of human skills and the importance of investing in people, and instead of having the AI halo effect that it's going to solve all of our problems for everything.
All right, thank you. Let's give a big hand to Suzanne. remember to give feedback through the event app. I'm sure that Suzanne will like it. So, and here's a big, small, big or small, depending on how you see it. But thanks for the excellent presentation. Thank you. And now we have a 20-minute break. So please enjoy some coffee, tea, refreshments, as well as some sweet, tasty